This is K.M. Weiland, and you're listening to the 85th episode of the Wordplay Podcast. This has been a big week for me. On Friday, I typed the last 600 words in the final chapter of The Deepest Breath. The mountain of the first draft is officially climbed. This is the part where you envision me planting my personal flag in the crusty snow and doing a little yodeling. Okay, well, truthfully, you might want to skip imagining that last part. The manuscript weighed in at 83,000 words, the shortest book I've ever written, which is almost kind of ironic since my last book, Dreamers, was the longest. The book is, of course, rougher than 9 miles of country road after a gully washer, but overall I'm very pleased with how it turned out. I plan to let it sit for a week or two while I try to answer some lingering research questions. Then I'll dive back in for a few cleanup edits before sending it on to my beta readers. To reward myself for a job completed, I splurged and bought a Kindle. Although I've always sworn, and continue to swear, that nothing beats printed pages lying open in your hands, I've been inching closer to the digital craze. And this week, I finally gave in and ordered myself an e-reader. Now I'm waiting with bated breath until the mailman brings my Amazon box. On a related note, as of February 1st, the Amazon price of the Kindle versions of my historical western A Man Called Outlaw and my medieval epic Behold the Dawn has dropped, probably for a limited time, from $4.99 to the low price of $2.99. So if you're interested in either, be sure to get 'em while the getting's good. The February issue of my e-letter hit inboxes last week. It included the usual roundup of inspirational quotes, creativity jumpstarters, and helpful links, as well as the article Don't Skip the Important Parts, and my response to a subscriber's question about whether it's ever a good idea to open your story with a character other than the protagonist. If you're not receiving the e-letter and would like to, you can sign up for my mailing list on my website at kmweiland, that's weiland.com/mailing-list.php. You can read back issues online at kmweiland.com/eletter-issues.php. Control your speed, control your pacing. The latest post in the video series on my blog explains, with a little help from William Faulkner's Flags in the Dust, why pacing in a story is like the soundtrack in a movie. You can watch the video on my blog at wordplay-kmweiland.blogspot.com. New videos are posted every Wednesday. Meanwhile, enjoy this week's podcast, Most Common Mistakes series. Are you confusing readers with poor cause and effect? As the creators of our story worlds, authors are privileged with a certain amount of inside information. We almost always know what's going to happen to the characters before an event actually occurs. The readers and the main character might not have seen that left hook coming from the antagonist, but we authors saw the bad guy sneaking up on the protagonist long before his actions manifested themselves on the page. Because of this inside information, it's all too easy for us to risk confusing readers by showing the effect of an action before we show the cause itself, such as in the following example. Cora opened the window to yell at her son. He stood next to the fire hydrant across the street, even though she told him about 1,000,000 times to stay in the yard. At the beginning of this paragraph, the reader has no idea why Cora is yelling. They don't know her son is across the road any more than they know Cora had instructed him to stay in the yard. Here's an even more subtle example of transposition. Cora jumped and whirled around when the fire hydrant exploded. The reader sees Cora jump, but he has no idea why she jumped. At first glance, this may seem like a niggling problem. After all, the reader has only to read to the end of the sentence to discover why Cora reacted as she did. But by transposing events, even momentarily, you're blocking the reader's view of the story. In his article, 3 Secrets to Great Storytelling, Writer's Digest, January 2011, best-selling thriller author Stephen James explains, as a fiction writer, you want your reader to always be emotionally present in the story. But when readers are forced to guess why something happened, or didn't happen, even for just a split second, it causes them to intellectually disengage and distances them from the story. Rather than remaining present alongside the characters, they'll begin to analyze or question the progression of the plot, and you definitely don't want that. Often, writers show the effect before the cause out of simple negligence. Because we know what's happened, the lapse in linearity doesn't present any confusion for us. However, some authors purposely transpose cause and effect in a mistaken attempt to create suspense. Eliot stared in shock. This couldn't be happening. If only he'd known, he might have prevented it. Heart pounding, he sank to the curb. In front of him, police cars surrounded his brother's crumpled Camry. This is a technique that works only in a rare handful of instances, chapter beginnings occasionally being one of them. But, more often than not, the result is reader frustration over your refusal to share the information the character is receiving as he receives it. If you can strengthen the narrative of your story by showing a logical progression of cause and effect, you'll end up with leaner prose, more honest character reactions, and more involved readers. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, visit me on the web at wordplay-kmwyland, that's weiland.blogspot.com, and be sure to listen again next week.